Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Seoul Kudos versus Kim Clavel fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content and I will try my best to get it out there for you guys. You know, I appreciate all the support I've had with it so far. There's been plenty of videos that have come from people requesting on there, and again, like I say, it really supports the channel and the link will be in the description. Thank you very much. But let's get straight into this one though. So this is again another good, world championship fights, and it's another one of a good most valuable promotions world championships women's fights. And again, of course they do seem to be basically having a world title on pretty much every single one of their shows at the moment. There's a couple which they have which maybe don't, but for the majority of the shows in which MVP put on, they have a world title on the line at the moment. And it does seem to gain a bit of attention, to the event. I'm sure without this fight there wouldn't have been quite as much attention on the event. I mean, it's still not a massive event, but I know that Kim Clavel is able to sell to an extent as a women's fighter in Canada. I mean, she's fought the majority of her career in Canada as quite often the main event. And again, like I say, I feel like her name alone is good enough to be able to sell an event in Canada. But I'm glad that they're doing another event in Canada because I feel like there is some real talent there. And I think there's a few fighters on the card in which definitely are talented fighters. I'm excited to see Tam Theobald, Amanda Gaye. Yeah, there's a couple good names on the card in which I'm excited to see. And, maybe having a world title on most of their cards makes it difficult to push some of their lesser shows that maybe, are just a more prospect kind of base card, which won't necessarily have a world title on the line. But at the same time, it is great to see the minimum weight division in the women's scene finally getting some recognition. And, when I say finally getting some recognition, of course, there is this fight, but they're also working with the Valle sisters as well, and I think that's great to see. Of course, Yukasta Valle has had quite a bit of attention on her while she was in the light flyweight division, and that was with her working with Golden Boy. Again, I'm not entirely sure if she is fully signed with MVP or if she is still with Golden Boy, but nonetheless, they're working together, and I think Yukasta Valle has been announced to be on the Jake Paul undercard for his next fight. So yeah, like I say, that's good to see. And of course, they're also working with Naomi Valle as well. And I think MVP, in my opinion, should be looking at the winner of Sarah Borman versus Yuko Kuroki, who are the other two belt holders in the division, to try and get them on the board, because I believe they're both fighting for the other two belts. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure at least one of the belts is on the line for it. So again, it's good to see them two fighting, and then like I said, the winner of that should be put on and made most valuable, in which that's what they're branding it as. And then of course that would set up some big fights for the winner of this one. But they are now working with Kim Clavel. Clavel has kind of always had that star potential as a big name. She, of course, is a former world champion in the women's lower weight division. She was a former light flyweight world champion, and then she went on to lose it against Neri Plata. But again, like I say, as a Canadian name as well, she's been somebody who has always kind of come up short against the very best, but for the most part has always kind of looked like a really high skilled level fighter who should realistically be a world champion, even though, like I say, she's never quite been able to do it enough to be able to, remain a world champion for longer than just one fight. And of course, that loss versus Neri Plata was the first time, and the second time that she had a defeat on her record was against Evelyn Bermudez, which of course, there are two fights there in which definitely haven't aged badly. Neri Plata is going on with her career and has another big fight and another world title fight coming up again soon. And Evelyn Bermudez just went on to win via a first round TKO against Sarah Bailey in quite, exciting, unexpected fashion, which again is a shocking thing and may possibly lead on to Evelyn Bermudez actually getting signed with MVP. I feel like MVP definitely should explore into more so the Argentinian market for some women's fighters who are champions, because there is some real talent there. And I mean, Sol Kudos, I believe, is a talented fighter. She's someone who, of course, is the champion, and so full credit to her for being willing to put up her belt and coming into Canada. I mean, she'll be coming in as the underdog in the away corner, even though she is the champion. She beat Son Barnstar by split decision to win the belt last time out, and I thought she would lose that fight, to be fair. Yes, you look at Barnstar's record, and it's not entirely, the most glamorous of records, but she still has a good kind of style and is a tough fighter to beat. And this is Kudos' first fight outside of Argentina. I'm sure she's getting paid well. That is probably the reason as to why she has come over. But you would probably think, surely, if she wins, she would be signed by MVP. I feel like that's realistically how they should be working. I feel like if they are signing women's fighters, then they shouldn't just try and go for the bigger names. They should also go for the names in which aren't getting these same opportunities, which, that's what MVP and Jake Paul's kind of been pushing and talking about fighter pay and all these things. They should be, it's good to give them the opportunity for one fight, but like I say, if Sol Kudos is able to win, then she should get the opportunity to fight on other big shows on the zone with those most valuable promotions in the future. So again, that's my opinion, and hopefully if she does win, that will happen. But of course she has to get through the tough test of Kim Clavel. But to speak about both fighters, we'll start off with Sol Kudos, and Kudos is somebody who I think stays low for a lot of the early part of the fight. She's able to, catch shots with a tight defense and then throw quite a low, duck down, throw quite a low jab, which is a strong jab to the body, to be fair to her. Again, she may have a few issues at times being able to creep that jab up a little bit more early on, but again, for the most part, she's able to stay low and does seem to have a solid kind of foundation in her footwork. She's got relatively fast hands and circles off the back foot pretty nicely, and again, maybe is the more willing out of the two to go on the back foot. But again, I think she fights well on the back foot. She is somebody who's able to move instead of fighting out of bad spots, which is always nice to see. She's well-disciplined fighter for sure. Again, I think she showcased that discipline well in that fight against Baumstar, where Baumstar was spending the entirety of the fight trying to get Kudos to go into a war with her. But until, the later rounds, Kudos wasn't having it. And then Kudos didn't go into a war with her. She just picked her moments quite well to actually, throw, and then was able to pick up them later rounds when Baumstar was tired. It's a pretty, well-used, well-known method. But again, it's nice to see. She's pretty hard to tie down. I don't think, like I say, she gets drawn into exchanges. She's got a strong body jab, which I've talked about. She's got off-putting shots, in my opinion. I think she's able to, throw a shot which can stop momentum and just, may not have a tremendous amount of power, but it's a nice singular shot in which, like I say, can just catch you and throw you off your rhythm a bit. And she's somebody who can improve throughout and build throughout and change gears late on as well. She's got a consistent work rate. She's able to box to a game plan nicely, and I, at the same time, believe that she won't be bullied. I think neither of these fighters will be bullied. I don't think there's going to be one or the other who's going to be that physical in this fight, just because they are both quite, small fighters. They're not the most physical of fighters, but again, neither of them will be bullied. They both do have heart. She can shorten up shots nicely when coming out of exchanges, especially late on in the fight. That's what she did to land on Baumstar later on. She wasn't throwing a tremendous amount of hooks throughout the majority of the fight, but in them final few rounds, she was able to catch Baumstar going out with a couple surprise hooks, like I say, showcasing that she can shorten shots if necessary, which was something in which I was asking and kind of questioning if she was able to do. But again, she was able to showcase that well later on. Negatives about her, I think, again, she has a few problems finding range, and I think there was quite a few occasions in which she was kind of just flinging out a wasteful, fast but very wasteful jab in which, like I say, wasn't really doing anything. Like I say, moving the jab to the head and actually putting her work up a bit does take a bit of time, where, she is often throwing downwards, and if she gets caught throwing downwards, that can really rock her off her balance and again cause a few issues. I think she's more willing to accept the back foot, like I've talked about, and she does throw more in singles than that of Kim Clavel, who often throws, a high output and in clusters. She can be made to reach. She doesn't really land with a tremendous amount of intent, especially early on. Again, she will try and wait until you tire a bit. She can waste a lot. She can be moved with punches. She's not got, like I say, the best of shot variety. And again, there was a couple of times in which I saw her in that last fight again trying to go for the uppercut, trying to go for a different variety of shots, and it just wasn't working, it wasn't landing, and it showcased that maybe she hasn't been able to drill that the best. Her power in shots again is limited. Maybe she is a little bit more powerful in just her singular shots than that of Kim Clavel, but again, the power in this fight is limited, so I wouldn't be expecting a knockout from either of these two. Her head is on the line quite often. I think, like I say, getting her timing down can be a bit of an issue, and she did seem to be getting caught with the hook from Baumstar, quite often when Baumstar went to throw that kind of left hook, and whether that was to the body or whether that was to the head, that was the shot in which was kind of having success when she stepped into it and then started trying to throw it. Again, that was a shot in which Clavel probably should do to have a bit of success in this fight. Moving on to speak more about Kim Clavel, she's somebody who's got solid lateral and head movement. I think she resets pretty well coming out of exchanges, which is again another nice thing to see. Another, relatively disciplined fighter, not quite as good as that as Cudos, but again, moves pretty well. She's got better shot variety in my opinion. She throws more in combinations, of course, than Cudos. I think it is, mainly combinations in which she throws. She's a come forward fighter when she's at her best. She's willing to let her hands go. She's got relatively fast hands for the most part and is always wanting to be, landing last and the last one to kind of being able to, like say, throw in an exchange. So if Cudos does get in any exchanges, then she will have to really, make sure she's being tight and tucking up and not admiring work and leaving openings and leaving gaps. She is able to sneak a jab through pretty well. Clavel, she won't be bullied. Like I say, I think she's the more aggressive out of the two. I think she's best in close and better in close than Cudos. I think she maintains her output well, and again, like I say, I think she's got heart. And again, on both of them fights that she's fought at a world class level, she's showcased that heart. And she's on a good run at the moment. She's got the confidence, she's got the momentum, she's just signed a big deal with Most Valuable Promotions. All these things are going in her favour. Maybe that might mean she might have a bit of pressure on her shoulders, of course, also fighting in probably what will be, I'd imagine, the biggest crowd of her career because of the, Most Valuable Promotions involvement. But still, like I say, will she be able to thrive or not? Negatives about her, I think she can be reckless in exchanges. I think she can admire her work, making her ready to get caught with counters, and that's where she was having a lot of problems against Bermudez, who does, really land well when she's throwing counters. She, like I said, I believe can be caught with counters often. She doesn't really get past the lead hand too well. She can be made to reach at a mid-range and not timing her own counters, just kind of hoping that they will hit quite often, just throwing out a random shot at the end, after she gets caught with one and not really timing it, not really trying to throw with much accuracy, just kind of winging it out and hoping that it does something. She can be throwing, a bit too many kind of wasteful shots again in exchanges and getting in kind of unnecessary when, she doesn't need to try and get involved in an exchange. Again, she will be able to disengage and then circle off well, but again, she doesn't always have to go into the exchanges. She can, wait to see what her opponent does and then try and go from there. She ducks her head down to the right quite a lot and kind of ducking off to the right, and again, that can be a predictable kind of move which, you can punish. She doesn't really seem to be able to discourage all of her opponents, especially elite opponents, too well. She takes a lot of punishments, she leaves herself open when throwing, and finding her own range with, like I say, her counters can be an issue. Who do I think is going to win? I think that Sol Cudos is going to be able to win, and I think she's going to be able to cause the upset in a close fight via a split decision. I think if she boxes how she boxes against Baumstar, I was impressed. Of course, this is going to be a much tougher level of opposition because Kim Clavel is going to be coming with more of an effect, aiming to do more damage, throw more, and come forward more. But I think if Cudos can stay tight, catch a lot of shots, try and land that kind of sneaky shot if it does get in close when she's coming out of exchanges, but also being able to actually box on the back foot quite well, circle off well, like I say, staying quite low if necessary. I think she can have a good amount of success. And I think Kim Clavel might tire a bit. She's able to, go the rounds well, but she might tire a bit. And then I think if Kudos can then come in to a second gear, I think she can have success. She might lose the early rounds, Kudos, but I think in general she is the more compact, better defensive, smarter boxer out of the two. And again, like I say, I think she's going to be able to win. Again, we'll have to wait and see what the judges are saying, if it's a close fight. And of course, Kim Clavel as the home fighter, she might get the nod. But I believe from what I will be watching that I believe that Sol Kudos will be able to win a close decision. Who she could go on to sign to fight next? Of course, she probably should be signed by MVP if she does win. Then maybe she fights the winner of Ikastavaya versus Bastillos. Maybe she fights the winner of Borman versus Kuroki. Good fights there against other world champions. If not, there's an American fighter called Medina, who I believe is not unranked, unbeaten, and is having another 8-rounder fight, and I think she's like 8-0, 9-0 now, so I think she should maybe be stepped up, and maybe it is the right time for her to get that world title opportunity, and as an American fighter, again, might be able to give another opportunity for Kudos to fight in America. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.